This video is about the 12 signs of the zodiac. It's not about if you were born between March something and May something, you're so-and-so. It's a more serious thing for people that have some real interest in astrology and for people who try to read horoscopes, professional astrologers. It's a very big subject, so I'm going to do it in two parts. This is the first part, and it's going to be about what the 12 signs of the zodiac actually are, how they're defined. So it's going to have to touch the topic of tropical versus sidereal zodiac signs. The zodiac signs are a way to measure space. And the easiest way to explain why there's 12 of them and why they're all of an equal size is to use an analog clock. So the way a clock works, the round part here is the circle of space that's all around us. And this is the part of space that all the planets move through, especially the sun and the moon. That's the clock itself. And the clock has two hands. One hand moves very fast. That's the moon. And one hand moves more slowly. That represents the sun. When the sun goes around this whole thing, that's 1 year. When the moon goes around the whole thing, that's 1 month. If we mark the sun's position each time the moon comes back to its start, then we will wind up with 12 marks, 12 divisions of space. That's why we have 12 hours on a clock. That's why we have 12 months in a year. That's why we have 12 signs of the zodiac, each of equal size. The definition of the zodiacs is used regardless of whether it's sidereal or tropical. It's the same definition for either system. Some people think that the sidereal zodiac is actually the stars up in space, but that's not true. Up in space in the stars, around the path where the planets go, there's actually 13 constellations, not 12. And not only that, some of them are this big and some of them are this big. Some of them are twice the size of others. But the sidereal zodiac looks like this. 12 equal divisions. The stars in the sky don't look like that at all. There's 13 divisions and they're all of unequal size. So neither the sidereal nor the tropical zodiac is the stars. It's space. And the way we divide it is by the rhythm of the sun interacting with the moon. That's how we measure space. But the difference between the sidereal and the tropical is the question of where do we start measuring. Like we started this clock with the hands in some position, and so therefore we have our dots in certain places. But in space, where do you start? That's the real question. So to the question of where the zodiac starts is that it starts at the place where the center of the earth intersects with the center of space. It's the center of everything. So the center of the earth is called the equator. And if you project that equator out into space, you call it the celestial equator. Then the center of space itself is called the ecliptic. It's the area that all the planets move through. When the sun moves in its path over the celestial equator, that's called an equinox. That point is what tropical zodiac signs are anchored to. That's where they start from. That's what they're based on. Sidereal zodiac is quite different. It says that these divisions, these 12 divisions, should begin from some point in reference to a star. There's many different sidereal zodiacs, but the most popular one is called Lahiri, and it says that the Aries begins exactly opposite from the star called Spica. Which one is better, sidereal or tropical? Then everybody gets tense. Because if mine is the one that's not right, then it seems to be that my whole astrological theory must be completely bogus. But that's a misconception that's important to get out of the way right away. So otherwise we can't even talk about this topic without fear and all kinds of emotional stuff getting in the way. So to get this thing out of the way first, let me say definitely that even if you use the wrong zodiac, the zodiac is only one of several components that make up an astrological system. So if you use the wrong zodiac, it doesn't mean your whole astrology is bogus. It means that one part of it is not as good as it could be. So let's talk about some of the things that are not affected by having the right or the wrong zodiac. Aspects between planets are not affected. Because if planets are in this angle to each other, it doesn't matter if they're in this zodiac or that zodiac, the angle is the same.
Right.
Houses are not affected. Planets and houses are not affected. Because if planets are in this angle to the ascendant, it doesn't matter if it's in this zodiac or that zodiac, the angle between the planets and the ascendant is still the same. This is particularly true when the houses are dynamic. That's a little less true when we use whole sign houses, but still, even for whole sign houses, the planets resist changing. There's also other things in astrology besides the 12 signs. There's other ways of measuring space. For example, fixed stars, what's called nakshatra in India. So that's completely unchanged. And all this techniques based on fixed stars or nakshatras are completely unaffected by what zodiacs we use. And finally, even the signs themselves are only 75% different between the tropical and the sidereal. So 25% of the time, more or less, it will even the signs of the planets will not be changed by changing the zodiac. And for the sake of talking about history, we should know that this difference between the tropical and the sidereal zodiacs gets smaller and smaller as you go back in history. So our heroes and our founders and the people, our ancient seers and rishis that we look back towards, even if they used the wrong one, whichever one we figure out or decide is wrong, even if they used the wrong one, if they're back in time about 1700 years ago, then there's absolutely no difference anyway. So using the wrong one doesn't mean that your whole system is bogus. Now let's talk about which one is right or which one is wrong. Indian answer to the question of which zodiac is correct, tropical or sidereal, will surprise everyone, especially Indians. Because India is thought of as the place where the sidereal zodiac is believed in. And Indians embracing the sidereal zodiac think that they're following the ancients by doing so. So it's going to come as a shock if we actually look at the classical literature from India and see how they define the 12 signs of the zodiac, which is what I'd like to do right now. The first book that I want to consult is called Surya Siddhanta. Surya Siddhanta is the authority on Indian astronomy. It's from a classical period, many centuries ago. Some early places in the book, the Surya Siddhanta gives several statements which are very, very favorable to the tropical idea and very unfavorable to the sidereal idea. Let me mention some of those. The first is in the first chapter, the 13th text. It says, a solar month begins when the sun enters a new zodiac sign. So it says that a month is a zodiac sign. And there are 12 months in a year. That's very favorable to a tropical idea. Another thing that's very favorable to the tropical idea in Surya Siddhanta is 128. It says that the signs are not the stars. The signs are mathematical divisions of space, like what we did with the clock. It says 60 seconds, or vikala, equals 1 minute. 60 minutes, or kala, equals 1 degree. And 30 degrees equals 1 sign. 12 signs or rashis is a complete circle. So here we see that the signs are not stars, they're space. So in the third chapter, 3, 9, and 10, these texts explain that the stars and the signs are different because the signs move in relation to the stars, or vice versa. They move in relation to one another, so they can't be the same thing. And this is the principle on which Ayanamsha is based. It says, in one age, the circle of stars lags behind the signs by 600 revolutions. An age is a very long time. Towards the east. It lags behind 600 revolutions towards the east. And then it says, use this formula, and I won't tell you the formula, it's complicated. Use this formula to find the current location, or the ayana, of the equinox relative to the stars. So, these statements are fairly sure that the Surya Siddhanta considers the zodiac to be tropical. But the next thing I'm going to read you makes it just the clincher. It's the clincher. This is from text 7 through 10 of the 14th chapter of Surya Siddhanta. It says, it is well known that the circle of signs is split by 2 diameters. One is the line from equinox to equinox, and the other is the line from solstice to solstice. Between each equinox and solstice are 2 other divisions, and together these 3 mark the 3 strides of Vishnu. So, those are the 12 divisions of the zodiac based on the equinoxes and the solstices in plain black and white, straightforward language. It continues to say, the sun has entered Capricorn when it begins moving north for 6 months. And it has entered Cancer when it begins moving south for 6 months. Seasons last for 2 signs each, because in India there's 6 seasons. And the 12 signs named Aries, etc. are the months, which altogether comprise the year. So there's no doubt that the Surya Siddhanta has the same definition as other classical literature of the 12 zodiac signs being anchored to equinoxes and solstices. Tropical zodiac. Read for you is called Srimad Bhagavatam, and this book is considered to be the paramount Purana. It's considered to be the pinnacle of Indian culture. So the 5th canto of this book, which is the middle division of this book, it's all about astronomy. And text 2 through 6 of the 21st chapter of that 5th division define the zodiac signs. So I'd like to just quickly. Outer space is measured by the relation of heaven and earth. They are linked together by the sun, who is the center of everything, the king of all the planets. The sun moves to the north, crosses the equator, and moves to the south. When it goes north of the equator, days get longer. When it crosses the equator, days and nights are equal. When it goes south of the equator, days get shorter. On this basis, the sun moves through the 12 divisions called Capricorn, etc. There's a tropical definition of the 12 zodiac signs, but just in case you're not sure, it continues to say, the sun is in Aries or Libra when the days and nights are equal. Passing through Taurus, etc., the days become longer and then decrease until again they are equal with the nights. Passing Scorpio, etc., the nights become longer and then decrease to again become equal with the days. The 12 zodiac signs in Srimad Bhagavatam are defined unequivocally as tropical. The oldest book or document that we have from Western sources is called Mul Apin. This tablet reveals that the ancient Babylonians had a year divided into 12 months, each with 30 days, and that these months were anchored on the equinoxes and solstices. And then this tablet also goes on to list all of the constellations that they had in the north, in the south, and in that circle of space where the planets move. In the circle of space where the planets move, Mula Ping says there's 18 constellations. So nobody can reasonably argue that Mula Ping says that there's a sidereal zodiac of actual constellations. Because if they do, then that zodiac is 18 divisions. Rather, what the Babylonians do is they use the stars, the sidereal objects, to synchronize their calendars, which are lunar solar calendars. Lunar time is sidereal, solar time is tropical. So they have to synchronize these. As we'll learn, they go in and out of sync, sidereal and tropical time. So the Babylonians would look to the star that's heliacally rising, the star that would rise right before the sunrise. And they would look at it on the day when there's no shadow on a pole. That's the equinox day. On that day, what star is rising? If it's the scales, the sign they call the scales, which is where we get the idea Libra. If it's the scales, then our calendars are synchronized. If it's not the scales, if it's a certain amount away from the scales, we need to put in a leap month. So to get time back to be synchronized again. So I'll read you just a statement that says this. It says, on the 15th day of Tashritu, the scales, the mad dog, Ente na Barhum, and the dog become visible. Those are the different stars that you're supposed to be able to see on the 15th of Tashritu. Tashritu is an autumn month, and all their equinoxes were on the 15th, the middle of their month. Just so that you know it's an equinox, they say 3 minas is a daytime watch, 3 minas is a nighttime watch. So the Babylonians also have a 12-fold division based on equinoxes, and they also have something else, fixed stars, constellations of a different number than 12. Siderealists claim that Ptolemy changed the Greek system to be tropical. But I can't see any validity in this opinion because Ptolemy was the first author to write after Hipparchus. Hipparchus was the first Greek to even discover that there is a difference between tropical and sidereal. He was the first Greek to note that the equinoxes move in relation to the stars. So prior to Hipparchus, no author could opine whether or not the sidereal or tropical is better because they didn't even know that they're different. So after Hipparchus, Ptolemy is the first writer, and he says, now knowing that the solstices are different from the stars, he comes and says we must follow the solstices to define the beginning of space, not the stars which reference those solstices. So I'll read you some of his words translated into English. In the 10th chapter of his first of those 4 books, he says, the zodiac is a circle, so there is no clear beginning to it. But the sign that begins with the vernal equinox, Aries, acts as the beginning. Ptolemy is tropical, Babylonian Mulapin is tropical, Srimad Bhagavatam is tropical, Surya Siddhanta is tropical. All these authorities, that's why Surya Siddhanta says it is well known. All the ancient and classical authorities agree on how to define the zodiac's beginning point. So cultures always measure the equinox against the stars. For example, the Greeks measure the equinox Aries against the stars that bear the name Aries. And that's really where a big problem comes in, because the stars have the same name as the signs. And I think that's where the confusion comes from. I mean, the confusion is between the thinking that the thing which is the reference is the thing which is the object being referenced. As you can probably tell by trying to listen to what I'm trying to say, it's easy to make this mistake. Especially if you are a dozen centuries ago or more, where the difference between the tropical zodiac and the star that references is very small. So even if you make a mistake, there's no big difference. So that's how the idea arose, that there's 12 sidereal zodiac signs, by mistaking the references for the originals. First thing that we learned was why there's 12 zodiac signs, what they are. And we learned that it's because of the way the sun and the moon interact with each other as they move. They make 12 mathematical divisions, and those are the 12 divisions of the zodiac. By learning that, we realized that the zodiac signs have nothing to do with stars. Once we realize that the zodiac signs have nothing to do with stars, we don't really feel compelled to use a star to define where they begin. In fact, we feel quite compelled to use the point where the center of space is, where the equinox is, where the ecliptic crosses the equator. So, still, even though this is compelling, people who have been using the sidereal zodiac for a long time will have a hard time agreeing with my video. And they'll have a hard time even digesting it. And they might even get a little bit mad at me and say, how can you say that all of our history and all of our centuries of astrologers and all of our great astrologers today are wrong? How can you say that? And I'm sympathetic to that. I myself am of an Indian astrological background, of an Indian philosophical background, of an Indian religious background. So I myself had to deal with this same question. How can I say this? But what can you do? If you are really valuing tradition, don't you have to look back to the origin of your tradition?